Similarly, to the extent that we may feel that some organized interests are putting too much money into these things, again, the Supreme Court in a number of decisions has suggested that the First Amendment protects people's right to go out and essentially be a special interest group, and the remedy for abuses by special interests is supposed to be that we, the people, are supposed to see through them and vote them down. Anyway, let me stop there and throw things back to Steve.
Sure. I actually want to react to several of the things that Jonathan said. Firstly, I think his distinction between the state and federal constitutions is absolutely correct. I would just take it a little bit further and say that while the federal constitution is primarily a framework, the state constitution serves as both a framework and as an instrument of government. So, I mean, the basic organization of government function performed by the federal constitution was also performed by the Ohio Constitution. The listing of amendments that were adopted, I think, should get qualified between those that were proposed through the initiative and those that were proposed by the General Assembly. The victims' rights, the issue of pardons or the governor's clemency power. Those are things that really came up through the General Assembly. Trying to move over to the question that was posed that drew people here today: has the Constitution been hijacked by deep pockets or special interests? I think what the question was really focusing on was the initiative process. So I want to distinguish the initiative process and give you just a couple of numbers that may put it in context. Since 1913, between 1913, the first year after the initiative was adopted, and 2010, the Ohio Constitution has been amended 119 times. Of those amendments, 102 came on proposals made by the General Assembly. 48 General Assembly proposals were rejected. So the General Assembly is doing pretty well. They're batting around 68%, 68, 69%. The initiative petition, much to the disappointment of the initial backers, never got very much traction. 66 initiative petitions were on the ballot in this period of 97 years. Only 17 were approved by the people. So the batting average, if you will, for initiatives has only been 25, 26%. So let's take a more current view of what's going on. In the last decade, 3 constitutional amendments were approved by initiative. In the last 60 years, since 1950, 8 out of 38 proposed initiatives were approved. In the period between 1950 and 1974, 0 for 3. In the period from 1974 to 2000, 5 were approved, 3 of which were the term limits that you refer to. One was the fundamental issue of whether we should tax our soda pop, and the third and the fifth, I guess, was an issue involving registering to vote. So it seems to me that the initiative has not been used successfully very often. Jonathan's absolutely right. Article 8 of the Constitution, which he's really referring to, is about a third of the Constitution. It's a pretty long Constitution. It's 58,000 words. Thank goodness for word count. Eighth longest in the country. But at least a third of it is in that one article, and we have to go to the people when the third frontier needs more money, because there's a constitutionally imposed restriction on debt. So that's part of the instrument of governing. In order to govern, you occasionally have to use and occasionally have to amend the Constitution. I think there are a couple of issues that that are worth commenting on a little further. One is the tendency for constitutional amendments to become long, detailed, really statutory amendments. Jonathan mentioned the two best recent examples, the casino gambling, which is really a zoning ordinance masquerading as a constitutional provision, and the minimum wage constitutional provision, which actually enshrines in the Ohio Constitution a reference to that fundamental constitutional document, the Consumer Price Index. Now, I'm as much in favor as the minimum wage as everyone else, but does it really belong in the Constitution? Well, the reason the minimum wage amendment is in the Constitution is because the proponents, A, wanted to protect the minimum wage from the General Assembly, and B, they wanted to do in 2006 what the values voters did to the electoral process in 2004. In 2004, 13 states adopted a new definition of marriage, and undoubtedly it was intended to gin up the voter turnout in 2004 on the theory that value voters would be more likely to support the more conservative candidate. Well, organized labor isn't dumb. They figured out, well, maybe we should do the same thing. So in 2006, in 6 states, including Ohio, minimum wage provisions were on the ballot. 3 of them, including Ohio, were constitutional provisions. So it's another effort to use the amendment process as part of a larger electoral agenda. The question, though, let me say it like this. One could get on a soapbox and say, this minimum wage amendment is the worst thing that's come along in decades. And would anyone stop and listen to you while you're on your soapbox? No, because people aren't interested in the aesthetics of the Constitution. They're not interested in what is a constitutionally appropriate provision. They're interested in the substance of the minimum wage. I don't know how we can stop statutory-like provisions from popping up and being embedded in the state constitution. Ohio has one of the most robust initiative processes. We have very few limitations on what can be adopted through the initiative. One could involve the courts. One could involve the Attorney General far more than the Attorney General or the ballot board are involved now. But I'm not sure the cure is really worth the price. I think an open-ended initiative process has not to date done significant harm in this state, and indeed the California specter, I don't think that's going to come. One last technical point on the gambling issue. We have to disagree on something. I think on the gambling issue, there was no need for the proponents legally to go to the Constitution. The General Assembly has absolute power to regulate gambling in the state, other than lotteries, which are a special subspecies of that. The reason the proponents of casino gambling over the years went to the people through the constitutional amendment is not because an amendment was required legally, it's because politically they saw the amendment process as a way to end run, might not be the right word, as a way to avoid a legislature that was not very forthcoming.
Okay, and that may be, but I think that this is a way maybe to get us to talk about the fact that in 2012 we are coming not only to the centennial of the last Ohio Constitutional Convention, and as Steve mentioned, it's also going to be the centennial of the City Club. But we are going to be asked to vote again on whether to hold a constitutional convention. One of the things that seems to me to come out of what we've been talking about is the notion that people use the Constitution symbolically or tactically.